Video games are the newest art form, and like anything, their history is difficult to fully explain. Unless you're a professional like me who read the Wikipedia page.
Now, wait a minute, Lars Detective. You are not a real gamer. Real gamers spend at least 25 hours a day playing video games. Normies like you are the reason why the video game industry is being destroyed.
Oh, really, imaginary straw man? Well, I'm here to inform you that I watch Game Theory, and thus know everything about every video game ever, which is why in this video, I am going over the history of video games.
Video games were invented by the lizard people Illuminati around 1950 in order to brainwash people into doing things like, eating beef on Fridays. Or worse, watching TV.
The first video games were simulators of games like tennis or tic-tac-toe created to show the power of computers. I would think that showing ballistic missile tracking systems would be more impressive, but the exhibits with those were always mysteriously out of order. The first widely distributed game was Space War, a combat simulator created by the lizard people to train humanity into conquering other planets for them. The source code of this game was shared, because selling video games at the time was about as profitable as selling fishing rods in the Sahara. With the invention of time-sharing and new programming languages, video games became more common and surged in places like universities, where they could do what they did best: stop people from studying. Eventually, arcades arose, where people could pay to play video games. My French cousin, Les Active Moss, has asked to speak about this topic.
Arcades are bland and soulless rip-offs, created by corporations in order to have people spend money to play unartistic cash grabs about racing or space, instead of the previous artistically inspired masterpieces like tic-tac-toe. Ever since video games started being profitable, they were ruined.
A big flaw of arcades was that they required people to leave their houses, an issue which was remedied by home consoles. Now, I don't know why people would pay $50 for a ping pong simulator, but remember that this happened in the 70s, so that might explain it. While at first they could only play one game, eventually they became cartridge-based. However, arcades would stick around and have a golden age in the late 70s, with games like Pac-Man, a game about eating dead people. In 1983, the video game industry crashed because of someone getting bitten by an animatronic in an arcade. Wait, no, it's because of oversaturation. However, on the other side of the Iron Curtain, video games began to arise.
Hey, comrade, we need to start making video games to compete with Americans. But these console games are all capitalistic, mass-produced media to distract workers from class struggle. I have an idea, comrade. We make game about different blocks coming together in glorious revolution.
Video games eventually became popular again, with the first online games, which meant the internet was finally useful for something, since you could use it for more than nuclear disaster survival. Consoles also began resurging, which means it's time for Console Wars, Episode 1, The International Menace. Nintendo and Sega, two Japanese companies, started making consoles and competed with each other. This began the long-standing tradition of video game fans screaming at each other that they were objectively terrible human beings for buying another game console. Nintendo won by a landslide, partly because of their easily recognizable mascot, Mario, a character who kills wild animals in order to restore an absolute monarch. So, Sega decided to create their own mascot, which leads us to Console Wars, Episode 2, Attack of the Hedgehogs. With the advent of 16-bit consoles, Sega created Sonic the Hedgehog, their own mascot, which was designed to be edgy and cool, and his own game, where he stopped a scientist from conducting research by freeing a bunch of dangerous animals. Both companies made new 16-bit consoles, and Nintendo actually struggled to compete, which could be because of the games or whatever, but also the Super Nintendo Entertainment System doesn't sound quite as cool as the Sega Genesis. The two kept competing and eventually upgraded to new consoles. However, a new competitor entered the arena. Console Wars, Episode 3, Revenge of the Discs. Sony released their own console, the PlayStation, which absolutely destroyed the Nintendo 64 and Sega Saturn, and unlike its competition, used discs instead of cartridges, which were made as a safety measure against pirates, because if someone tried to steal a game from a store, the employees could throw the discs at them like shurikens. Despite PlayStation's dominance, Nintendo started doing very well in the handheld gaming market. The first attempt, the Game Boy, didn't do very well, but in 1995, they released the greatest video game system of all time, the Virtual Boy. Now wait a minute, Walrus Detective. How could you be praising a video game console if you said that they were made by the lizard people to brainwash humanity? Well, you see, while originally made for that, upon the creation of the first multiplayer game with a chat, they realized that trying to use humanity was a lost cause. So let me explain the genius of the Virtual Boy. The Virtual Boy has two lenses in the eye areas to create an incredibly realistic 3D environment that is monochrome red. Why did Nintendo do this? Well, it's deep symbolism of how we view things through the lens of, society or something.
Now, you may be worried that this product could cause headaches or eye damage, but Nintendo already thought of this and implemented the sophisticated system of telling people to stop playing every 15 minutes. Now, of course, a console isn't good without any games, so what masterpieces were created for this system? Well, there were many, but in particular, the newest Mario game stood out: Mario Tennis.
Around this time, people got tired of calling music and comic books evil. This is when controversies around video games first started, with people saying that they were too violent, and all the violence in video games inspired the world to be violent. It couldn't possibly be the other way around. Video games also started being made in 3D using polygons. Pay attention in math class, kids, because you might just revolutionize the games industry. Handheld gaming started becoming very popular, with Nintendo releasing more consoles, and one of the most successful games of all time: Pokemon, a game where elemental creatures capable of leveling mountains are kept as pets and fight each other with absolutely no safety protocols. Computer games also began rising in popularity, with the invention of gateway video games, also known as demos. Okay, there, I mentioned computer games. So now it's time for Console Wars, Episode 4, A New System. Microsoft released the Xbox, their own console, which is basically just a computer but without the silly option to not play video games, which competed with the Nintendo GameCube and the creatively named PlayStation 2. Sega also released their own console, but it didn't do very well and they stopped making them. But this wasn't the end for Sonic, who would continue to live on the internet as a meme lord. Console Wars, Episode 5, Nintendo Strikes Back. New game consoles were released. Microsoft made the Xbox 360. Wait, how did I miss 358 consoles? And Sony made the PlayStation 3. Man, how do they come up with these names? Nintendo, however, did not make the game Pentahedron. Instead, they made the Wii, which outsold both of these systems, with its realistic sports simulators that allowed you to exercise without doing any work. MMOs began to rise in popularity as well. In this period, shampoo sales fell significantly. And so did esports, because it is a real sport, Mom. You're just brainwashed by society. Multiplayer games in general grew with the internet, leading to a revolution in philosophy with all of the intellectual discussions occurring in them. With the growth of the industry, video game makers started focusing on things like despair, suffering, and darkness. No, not in their games, in their development studios. As smartphones rose in usage, mobile games surged in popularity, becoming the most profitable type of video game because of their amazing gameplay, and definitely not the fact that the App Store is basically just a Skinner box wrapping factory. At this point, video games were the most profitable entertainment media, which of course means that Disney would try to control it, making many games as part of the Mickey Mouse Expanded Universe.
You are fulfilling your destiny, Goofy! Haha!
To cheat antitrust laws is a power only one has achieved, but together I'm sure we can discover the secret. Haha!
With the rise of mobile gaming, handheld consoles began to decline, despite Sony's attempt to enter the market with the PlayStation Vita. Nintendo released the 3DS in 2011, but after that, no more attempts at handhelds were made. Independent games hadn't been very widespread due to publishers not wanting to take risks, but with crowdfunding and more access to game design tools, they became much more popular, mostly because you don't need a BTG96IX10000 processor to play them. The most popular was Minecraft, a game set in a universe where mathematicians banded together to destroy calculus, so curves never existed, where you make your way to the last of an endangered species and wipe them out. Console Wars, Episode 6, Return of the Handheld. Microsoft released the Xbox One, the third Xbox, and PlayStation changed up their naming scheme and made the PlayStation 4. Nintendo also tried. They made the Wii U, which didn't do very well because of all the casuals who said, "This console isn't portable, why is there a tablet?" and didn't even think about buying a 500-meter long extension cord. But Nintendo didn't give up, because the power of marketable characters was still with them. So they switched their strategy, and instead of making the Wii UI, they released the Nintendo Switch, a hybrid of handhelds and consoles with detachable controllers. I'd always assumed that all handheld controls were detachable, although I did notice that they were less responsive when I ripped them out.
Around this time, virtual reality came back, in collaboration with furniture companies, so people would crash into more things, thus increasing furniture sales. Augmented reality rose as well, which is taking the real world and adding fake things to it, much like this video. Microsoft and Sony have already released new consoles, which means that soon it will be time for Console Wars, Episode 7, The Ray Tracing Awakens.
Attention public! The government is trying to censor the BS network. They have broken into our studio. No, we're not. You have illegally taken over this network by force.
No, we haven't. These are false claims made up to have an excuse to censor us. How could I possibly be a criminal when my name is the mafioso polar bear?
Hello, public. I am the Detective Moss. You may know me from some of my plays. I have been on this network before, and the mafioso polar bear is not the host. He is spewing his uneducated propaganda. If you do the barest amount of research, you will find the truth.
Public, don't be brainwashed into doing research. The government is working together with big media companies to censor the truth.
But you are a big media company.